Hello everyone, and welcome back to Todos Santos. This episode, we're going to be continuing to fill in this end of the downtown, and we're just going to be doing a couple of kind of funny little projects to switch it up a little bit, just add some visual interest to the downtown instead of just continuing to fill it with same sorts of development as we've been doing. And I feel like it's pretty easy to just get hyper-focused on basically filling in with buildings and just focusing too much on the sorts of details and the layout of the roads and buildings and everything that goes along with that sort of development. So I wanted to throw in a construction site, which is something I don't think I've done yet in this series. And I thought, what better way to cap off the metro line that we made quite a few episodes ago than to just make it look like it's going to be expanded without having to actually expand it. Of course, it takes a lot more time to actually build a construction site than it does to just create the finished metro. That's City Skylines for you. But here we go. Let's do it. So I basically just quickly laid down the foundations by just having that basic gravel road there. I wanted that to kind of represent the area that they've, I guess, I don't know anything about how construction works at this scale, let alone construction for metro or rail or anything like that. But I figured they would need like a level area where they can know exactly what the elevation is, so they can put down these pillars that will support the track, and know exactly that it's going to be at the right height and that it's going to be able to support the I don't know any of these terms, but basically support the track. So I just used the gravel road to represent that. And then at the end here, we have this bulldozer basically clearing out area for the next stretch of this gravel road that represents level ground. And then behind that, we're going to put down a little bit of a roller. I guess that's what it's called. That's going to flatten it out. I'm sure anyone who knows anything about this sort of work is cringing right now, but that's, I'm just using my imagination. And that's fine sometimes. And really that's the whole point of this episode, is just, it can be a little draining and creatively limiting, I think, to just go for complete realism in every build. So I wanted to just switch it up, do something a little fun. And this is the sort of building that just comes really easily to me. So like, even though I have no idea what sort of stuff would go into a construction site, I can say, okay, they're going to need like piles of materials and stuff. So I'm just going to put down all these random little details that seem believable. And that's really what I'm going for, I think, is like believability instead of absolute realism. Because the amount of research it would take to learn about every little thing that goes on in a city would just, people do this for a living in real cities, and they probably still don't know everything there is to know about this sort of thing. So I just want to take it a little more casual with this build and just have some fun. And I really like this pillar asset. I think that's actually from the set of light rail tracks that I'm using. Technically the tram tracks, but I'm using them to represent light rail. So basically they've flattened out this first area, and they've established this one pillar, and then they're in the process of what we're putting down now, which is the next stretch of track that goes from this last pillar to the new one. And another purpose this build serves is just to kind of blend in the end of the metro, because it feels a little awkward to just have this raised metro track just kind of end at a dead end, like right in the middle of downtown. That felt a little weird. So this is a nice way just to both avoid having to rationalize that away, or to actually build. Like, I don't know what the end of a metro line really looks like if it's not a loop. Anyway, so this is my very responsible way of just completely avoiding researching that question and making it into a construction site. And that's what this game is really all about. So I tried using a highway ramp. I was trying to be clever with that, and it doesn't work, obviously, because when you have a raised road like that, it has the barriers around it. I'm sure there would be an asset on the workshop that could avoid that feature. I guess it's a feature. But anyway, that doesn't work, so I just end up making it out of these prefab concrete blocks, and it looks okay. It ends up being kind of hard to line up all the pieces, but I think I get the general look of just this big concrete piece, I guess, that's been stretched across these two pillars. And then I don't even know what this piece is here, but I'm basically using that to represent the I don't know what they're called in the context of like urban rail. I don't know if these are called ties or if that's like a different thing. But I'm basically, my thought process at least is that those are like the railroad ties that the track's going to be laid down onto eventually. And making this stretch of track like piece by piece makes me realize how like the insane amount of work that goes into this sort of project in real life. Like it's hard enough to do this in a video game. I can't even wrap my head around how the logistics of this work for making miles and miles and miles of railroad track or road or any kind of infrastructure project like that. It's just crazy. Okay, while I think about that, I'm going to shut my trap and you can watch me put down some details of what my imagination thinks a metro construction site looks like. So I have this little mobile office here, or I guess it's mobile, I don't know, it has a pretty big system of stairs and stuff around it that doesn't look very mobile. Anyway, that's irrelevant. You can see it's on a slope there, and that's why I have to build the stairs. This is one of many, many, many instances where I start to really regret how much slope there is in this city. And I think I've figured out the origin of that problem, which is that I somehow accidentally lowered the water level when I originally made the map. And the map is, of course, created from a height map of the San Juan area, which is, I mean, there are hills and stuff, but it's pretty much at sea level, of course. Like all the beaches are right at sea level. So when I somehow accidentally lowered the water level, it created all these slopes. It really starts getting in the way, starting about this point in the series. But, I just try to be creative and use whatever tools I have at my disposal to deal with that. Anyway, we'll get more into that in later episodes. So here's one part of the build that I did actually base on the research I did, which is there's this cool machine. I don't know what it's called or how exactly it works, but as far as I can tell, it's like a machine that runs along track that's already been laid and lays down the next stretch of track. So I just clipped together these two generator pieces because they were pretty much the only thing that looked like a vehicle that you could run on train tracks. So I put two of those together and put down a couple of just generic beam, like metal beam pieces to represent rail that's been laid. And then I put one in the middle to represent the next piece of rail that's going to be laid down. And I think it looks kind of cool. It's probably my favorite part of this construction site build. Now I'm using these piles. I think they're piles of hay or something like that, just to represent, I assume the material that they get from leveling off this area would have to go somewhere. So I just have this random pile on the side that is ready to be put into a dump truck and taken somewhere. Where do they bring like these big piles of dirt? I mean, it has to go somewhere. I honestly have no idea. Does someone like buy it? Is there a market for piles of dirt? I don't know. Well, I'll leave you with that question because that is it for the construction site. Pretty quick, simple build, but I had fun making it. So now we're just doing a quick project that's sort of in between the two main builds of this episode, which is just a little shopping center. Again, this isn't really based off anything particular in San Juan. I just wanted to have a little bit of a commercial area here at this kind of strange intersection because I figured it was a fairly major intersection running from downtown, from the roundabout that takes all the traffic from the bridge we built last episode. So yeah, I wanted to have some businesses here. I haven't used this solar parking asset very much, but it's kind of cool. I'm probably just ignorant of this, but I don't really understand like what the point of solar parking is. Like, what do the solar panels just, are they there to provide shade, and I guess they give power to the businesses that own them, or do they provide power to the city? I don't really understand how that works, but it's kind of cool, and it seems like something you'd have in a tropical or subtropical place like this. So yeah, I put it here. And then I also ran those just normal paved roads in there, just so I can have an entrance from the road, from the main road, into this little parking lot here. I mentioned that back, I think, in episode number 21, that it really bugs me that when you can have a parking lot or a driveway or a garage or something, and the game doesn't automatically give you a entrance from the main road into that area. So again, it's something I do kind of sparingly because it's kind of a pain in the ass to do it everywhere. So I just, I do it where I'm focusing a little more on detail, like this area. And then there are plenty of other places in the city where that's not happen. So the cars just have to drive over the curbs. And I'm just going to think of that as like, it's part of the lore of Todos Santos. Like, it's one of the ways the city's trying to reduce the amount of traffic, because it's so annoying to have to drive over the curb to get into a driveway or a parking lot. So that's the sort of place this is. I'm guessing whatever politician pushed that through was probably influenced by the tire industry. We could have like a big tire factory somewhere in Todos Santos. I feel like that would really bring this together, make a bit more sense, because it just seems a little silly right now. This is a ridiculous tangent, so I'm going to go back to talking about what I'm actually doing, which seems a little bit more relevant. So here's an instance of just like doing what I was talking about with filling in gaps as I go. So I just had this little back area. And one thing I'm definitely starting to consider more is that, like, if you have a business, like an office or a commercial area or something, they usually seem to have a back area for like deliveries and, storing stuff, that sort of thing. So I'm trying to consider that more, at least in less dense areas. Like in downtown and stuff, it's just going to be awkward to make deliveries and that sort of thing anyway, because it's so dense. But once you start leaving the urban core there, you just want to start considering that sort of thing and including it. And I mean, those are the kinds of details that are really gonna shape the city and like how the buildings and roads are laid out. Because it's easy to just make a cool road network and put down some cool looking buildings, but it's I'm finding that it's a lot more difficult, but also a lot more satisfying, I think, in terms of the build itself, to consider that sort of thing and try to give at least a semblance of logic to the way the buildings are laid out and the various access points for the buildings and that kind of thing. Okay, I'm starting to lag behind now, so we're going to go back to what I'm doing once again. And this is the second main build of the episode, which is, again, just doing something a little different, completely ignoring everything I just said about trying to figure out logic and have realism. Just forget everything. We're building a giant school in the middle of downtown, and it's layered. I hope you're ready for this build, because it's kind of weird. So I had this nice school asset. I don't know if this is anything like a school you'd find in San Juan, but it's just such a nice asset that I wanted to use it here. And because of the slope issue that I mentioned before, the top of the school at the back is basically at the road level behind it. So I just decided to put this giant parking lot on top of the back half of the school just to deal with that slope issue. I don't know if this makes any sense or if it's realistic at all, but I don't know. I kind of like it. And, like I said, this episode is just to change it up a little bit, do something a little different. And building on a slope like this always presents opportunities to do cool things with retaining walls and various other tools that I'll show off in a second. Okay, so I'm going to stop chattering while I work on this, and I'll be back in just a moment. So I put these stairs down here. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but I just kind of wanted to get this look of having tons of concrete things laying around that are basically, it's just required to be able to deal with the slope and to keep the structure of the school and the surrounding area all together. So yeah, I just wanted to have that little bit of staircase there to deal with the last bit of slope. You might have also noticed that I had just a little bit of trouble getting the parking spots to line up right in the parking lot road there. There's actually a mod now. Obviously, I didn't have it at this point, but I do now, at the time of this voiceover, that allows the parking lot assets to snap. So basically, you put down the parking lot road asset, the actual network, and then the parking lots or the parking spaces that go on top can basically snap to that area of network, which just makes it a lot easier to set up that sort of parking. It makes it a lot more fun to do and easy to do. So consequently, I end up using them a lot more once I install that mod. But that's not for quite a while. But I just thought I'd mention it now in case you were in the market for that sort of mod. I think it's called just parking lot snapping or something along those lines. It's one of the most popular mods over the last few months, I believe, on the workshop. And it's also, of course, in my mod list down in the description. Feel free to check that out. And then we, of course, had to have, for the school, a soccer field or football field, you might know it as. And then we're just finishing off with a few more details and some lighting as well. I put those very cool field lights down there. They're quite bright at night, but they look very nice. And of course, you'd have those on a soccer field at a school, probably. And I've been trying to pay more attention to lighting as I go. And there's some episodes where I've dedicated whole sections just to lighting everything up, making sure that everything both looks cool at night, looks interesting, and catches your eye, but also is somewhat realistic in terms of, where would be lit up, where isn't, because not everything needs to be lit at night. I mean, so, it's going to depend on what the use is, say, for like a parking lot. If it's only used during the day, you're not, for an office or something, you're not necessarily going to find every single one of those lit up at night. Because I assume that sort of setup, like a lighting setup like that, is quite expensive. And so if you were a business or, a government office or whatever, and you didn't need to have that lighting there, you wouldn't shell out for it, obviously. But then there are places like this school where, you never know exactly when you're going to need to park a bunch of people here. And you want some lighting so they don't trip over their own shoes in the dark. And I'm also trying to be mindful of that as I lay down roads. So a lot of the smaller roads just don't have lights at all, or I only place them at intersections, whereas the main roads are going to have a lot more lighting. Well, that's the end of the episode. We're going to be moving on soon to fill in the rest of the downtown with some high rises, among other things. I hope to see you in the next episode of Todos Santos. Thanks for watching. Bye.